grown up here, and from our side, from sort of Grundy's perspective, this show actually came about before Linda's exhibition downstairs, Little History, which was all about artists from the region. But it seemed entirely kind of obviously fitting within that, and it's kind of formed a sort of satellite that's within the show, but its own thing, its own show as well. And it also really, from our side, came at a point where Lisa's work, as an artist for many years, kind of reached a point where it felt like, okay, now's the moment to kind of give it a nudge in a different sort of, or in a kind of give it a push to see what happens in a space like this. And so I was sort of really pleased when she responded in a way that's really been very ambitious with the space, and has kind of created this one-hand print drawing, but also very kind of sculptural form that really does use this incredible sort of rotunda space, which often maybe doesn't get the look that it might do compared to all the galleries downstairs. So and I think from my side, sort of curatorial, also interested that there is this question of text and correspondence, and the fact that this room is the closest to the library. It's this kind of adjoining, almost like a reading room, is an important element. But anyway, that's a very rambling introduction. I shall now hand over to Lisa to say a lot more about it.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming along. And it's great to be here in Blackpool. It's great to have been given this opportunity. As Richard said, he sort of set the kind of mission for me, which was how can I kind of interact with the architecture of the space. And given that it's quite a classical picture gallery, an Edwardian picture gallery, it has a kind of set of expectations attached to it, even though it's a contemporary gallery. Lots of artists have been making interesting plays on the formality of it. I'm quite interested in making interventions and playing with the expectations of the audience. And even in just the way that people might promenade or walk around the space is something I think about when I'm planning an exhibition. So I wanted to make something that just quite playfully interacted with the architecture here. And I was thinking about this for a good while before the exhibition came along. Richard sort of set me this kind of seed in my head to work in this way, and then I went off to do an artist residency in Mexico, and I was there at the beginning of this year. And while I was there, I was looking. While I was working in a city called Puebla. Is anyone familiar with this place? Because it's not very many people who travel there from Europe, but it's basically a city that's south of Mexico City, and it's incredibly cultural. It's just an amazing place visually to explore as an artist or anyone, as a tourist. But what I was looking at, I was curious about the sort of hanging techniques used in sacred art, and I went there to learn about gold leafing. So I worked within a former convent, which is also operates as a museum, and I went to learn about the kind of pre-Baroque, pre-colonial techniques for making sacred art using gold. So I had a lot of kind of very decorative influences, but I was always curious, and I was always thinking back to this space and about sort of how I might hang something, whether it was made out of gold or made. But and in the end, I kind of moved away from the gold material form, because I became quite sort of concerned about the lots of implications in terms of power, colonialism, kind of the sacred art elements, and I moved to working with ephemeral materials, as I quite often do. So this paper that we have here is actually it's a tablecloth. So this is called Papel Americano. it's available in all different colours. It's absolutely amazing the kind of breadth of materials that I was discovering there as an artist, you know. And it was available in these party shops, people buying, decorative sort of items to celebrate various saints, festivals, birthdays, you know, all the usual range. But this particular colour, because I started to become more and more interested in the way that people were associating colour as a sort of code which relates to asking a certain saint for help, favour, or in day-to-day life helping to solve problems. So I chose this colour because it's the colour associated with St Jude. Does anyone here know St Jude?
They're helpless causes, isn't it?
Yes.
Patron saint of helpless causes.
Yes, also yeah.
My patron saint.
Yes. He's very much a saint of the people, I think, as I was told in Mexico. I'm naturally kind of drawn to these aquatic colours, with these kind of cool, soothing, calming kind of colours. But this took on another meaning for me, because I couldn't escape the way that every colour was coded and the way that people were using that as part of day-to-day life. It became really interesting to me, more and more fascinating as I was travelling around. And because I don't speak Spanish and my Spanish I learned is very limited, I kind of let go of understanding through language, and I just tried to understand everything around me visually. And I was there for just over a month, so it was quite a long time when you're in a different kind of, you're in a different state of consciousness really. So I made this work while I was there, and my thinking, I was sort of absorbing these ideas about ephemeral materials and the meaning and the potency of different colour codes. And also, of course, you know, I was living in a situation where I was surrounded by two very smoky, big volcanoes. And I started to understand again another level of sort of what this means to be kind of using totems and asking for favour from a higher source of God. Because people are living in that sort of imminent day space, and at any time, you know, that there's kind of the threat of the forces of nature, which are obviously kind of more affected me more because it was an unusual situation for me to be that close to that sort of sense of danger and that sense of risk, which, you know, I have not experienced in my sort of day-to-day living, so much being mostly in this country. So they were my influences and my thinking as I was on the journey towards making work. But when I came back here, I started to sort of think about how I could echo some of those ideas in the actual display. And we worked really well with the team here, some great technical assistance, I have to say. Some of you are here today. Despite its sort of fragility, this paper was quite tricky to actually assemble in this way. So we had lots of kind of fun games trying to assemble it in session. But I think it just took a bit of kind of experimenting and nudging and kind of very careful, slow activity to make it. So I kind of made the assemblage with this kind of ephemeral, totemic kind of qualities of materials in mind. And I also have this measuring stuff here, which actually is minor stuff. So again, I was thinking about this other narrative of mining, which is obviously quite a hot topic right now for the file. But this kind of assemblage of every colour of, like, the colour of the rope, the colour of the spindles or the dowels that we used, the colours of all the fixings, the things that were continually being reevaluated, and sort of that attention to detail was really well supported by the sort of collaborative experience of working with Richard as a curator and the other staff in the galleries. So, enjoyed it.
I just wondering, do you want to say anything about because you really get the sense of the text and the letters, and that kind of process of working. I mean, that's something that's come up in your work in the past, as the book that's downstairs, for instance, and that sort of sense of correspondence which you see in the postcard. Is it worth it? Do you want to expand on that a bit?
I'm always interested, like I approach the space with the interest in playing with expectation of the viewer's experience. I'm interested in sort of playing with the expectation of sort of the book form. So there's a book downstairs that I make, which is it's kind of a play on a novel. So I'm interested in deconstructing that idea and breaking it apart. And when I made this work, I was interested in kind of shattering lots of letter forms, lots of the imprint of text on memory, because I think that, especially in the digital age, we have so much information in our lives day to day, and I'm one for trying to modify this, because that's what I feel is important for myself. So, but I think that we absorb so many words and information, and some of it is quite emotionally laden. So, in my process of making this, I was thinking about just kind of trying to let go and let go of the constraints of text and typography, and just really kind of.
That's interesting, because as I've been sort of coming from downstairs, I've been thinking about it as almost like a flow. You could, not like a stream of consciousness, but certainly just sort of what you were talking about there, a stream of release or something, but also thinking about the volcanoes, and it was being like a lava flow, and this fact that it kind of goes up like a mountain and down, and then underground and round and all the rest of it, and thinking about flows in that way is something that's come to my mind as I've been sort of interacting with the work day to day.
Yeah, I mean, the different ideas of how I wanted to work in this space. So I think it started out as I wanted to make sort of like rain shower of letter forms, and so I was printing on this kind of like quite thick tracing paper, and I tested this out in another residency that I did in Preston at the Burley. I don't know if anyone here knows about the Burley Studios, which is another great space, and so I was there for a few weeks before I went away, and I didn't have the ladders tall enough to like kind of test out whether it would work in this kind of space. I was just interested in making something that just really did fall to the ground, and it did sort of have that sense of just like just letting go of this information, or trailing and making kind of a beautiful mess, you know. So that was my sort of what was really kind of staying with me as a thought while I was making it. But can I ask for questions about anything about process or ideas or anything you're interested in?
I was just going to ask about the process. Is it with that?
No, I printed this all by hand with a small roller about this big. I should have brought it with me because it's just. But so I got a table like the one downstairs with drinks on, and I had this 25 metre roll of party paper, so it's quite thin. That's why I chose it for this process, because I could just ink up a sheet of glass with this really nice ink that I've got, which is dry super quick. So I took impressions from some letter forms that I had laser cut, and I just kind of kept scattering them and rearranging them on the table. So I'm taking like a sort of you know, like a classic rubbing that you take from a surface. It's that sort of method. So I was just lifting the surface of the letters and then just keep rearranging them and going over some of it, darkening and lightening. And I was kind of conscious of this sort of like tactile change of tone, just to give this sense of movement. disintegration and kind of little like kind of clusters of information sort of dissipate. So there was that kind of narrative going on while I was kind of
Textures in it, it's got a really nice texture.
How long does it take?
I did it in one night.
Really well done.
A whole night.
So when I was doing the residency, you know, I was living and working in the same space for like over a month. So every day, you know, you're there, and even though you're not kind of productive 24/7, there's always that thought, what am I doing next? And I sort of planned how I was going to do it, and I've made works in a similar way to this before, but never to that extent. But it was just me and another girl who was working in the studio one night, and we just made some margaritas. Only one. We got some music on, you know, put some new order on, I think, and then we were on. So that was it.
I wanted to ask why you felt that you needed to put the photograph there as well, and what the concept is behind that, and how you wanted it to relate.
Yeah, well, I made this artist multiple that accompanies the exhibition, and I've got some here actually. I'll pass them around. I know some of you might have one, but if you want to take one, pass them on. So I always had this other element to the exhibition, which was a little portable artwork that could be shared by post. I actually posted out like over a few hundred of these to people all over the world, people that wanted to see the exhibition I knew being here. So I was just really making a little reference to that, but also I think we just felt that there needed to be another, I don't know, another sort of, it's like a little porthole into maybe this place that's been the influence, it's part of the story of this idea about the mining, about the natural nature's influence really, and nature's last word perhaps as well. Yeah, so
it's a place as well.
yes, yeah. Anyone else?
I was just rummaging backstage because I think we might have some spares with the envelopes as well. We'll do more.
What's the significance of the colour of the road?
Well, it was just another contrast to kind of try and bring out this colour of paper. It's sort of like a supporting player, really, if you like. I tend to think of all these objects and fixings as like little characters in the story, you know. I mean, I did have some other rope that I brought back from Mexico, which really, we tried to use, but it wasn't long enough. Because can you see how much rope you need here to be able to get this up there? It needed to travel all the way down to the floor in the entrance. So we just had this engineering nightmare kind of going on. But the rope that I wanted to use, it had a sort of it had a twist in it that looked like a bit like a cable, like an old cable, and we were thinking about the lines of communication, the things that sort of travel beneath the earth. We had that sort of association with that material, but sadly that material is at home. Yeah. But again, it was just a supporting sense.
Is there a significance to, because you said there's a significance to the mining staff, is there a significance to the coil of rope as opposed to cutting it off?
It was starting to feel like a bit of a nautical operation, so I just used my nautical sailing skills to tie the rope and throw it on. But I think I'm trying to make the intention that there's some kind of, I'm referencing this process that we've had to go through, that there is a process to this whole construction, and I want that to be visible. I don't want it to be invisible.
Yeah.
So,
Actually, interesting you mentioned that, because I was also thinking about that whole thing of kind of like mining and maybe like needing that extra, because as you say, it refers to the fact that this is being dipped right down essentially and come back up, and it's a sort of relic of that process, I suppose, but also a nod to those themes of kind of mining that you're talking about.
Stand over there so you get in the picture.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. That's great. And we might have some of those, some additional kind of invites downstairs. Okay, so I've also mentioned, of course, tonight we're opening Stephen Clarke's new commission downstairs, and which do look outside on the courtyard. Some new things. It will be embellished next week on the other side as well, so you've kind of seen phase one now. And of course, do check out the exhibition Linda Morris curated Modern History Volume 1. You haven't seen that already. We've got a catalogue downstairs as well. There's an essay by Linda in it. There's pages. All the artists have been given a page to make a new artwork as well in that. So it's a kind of it's a whole set of mini editions essentially. So do have a leaf through there. And I'll be around. If you want to ask questions, I'm slightly tempted on the back of this to even kind of do a little mini sort of tour of that show. But if you've certainly got any questions about it, then do ask. But sort of delighted, I suppose, as well. Just it's great that everyone's come tonight for
Thanks, Lisa. Thank you.
It's actually better if people do it on their own or than you just